Hey guys, so as I mentioned in my previous video, I got this guy right here as partial payment for a job I did for a friend. And of course the first thing I did was I checked to see if the lights came on, and they didn't. I checked the flashlight over here and it didn't work. So I assumed the battery was dead. Put it on to charge. And when it was on charge, I checked everything again and the lights came on. The flashlight came on. But on the back of this side, there's a, you see at the top here. Let me move the camera. There's an air compressor. And actually it does say over here, air supply, not the band. But I checked this and I got nothing. Even when it was charging. So, I pulled apart, pulled that off. Found a little bit of a weird setup in here. I guess with certain kits like this, some of them didn't come with the compressor, because as you can see, the back here is not exactly built for it. These holes have been drilled after the fact, along with this big slot. And this guy is this outer case is one piece, and then this whole system sits in its own little cradle that they've screwed in. You can see there's screws there. There's one right back there. That's holding everything in. So once I got this guy apart, let's take a second to look at what we got here. Fairly typical setup. We have a 12-volt motor, just a small motor, which goes into a small gear at the back. It looks to be, maybe a 12-tooth gear, maybe a 15, something like that. It's just tiny. But that small gear drives this larger gear, which then there's a shaft that connects it to a wheel back in here, and I'll show you that in just a second. But that wheel has an offset pin, so that as this spins, that pin rotates, which drives the piston up and down. And there's a little check valve up in the top here. Actually, the check valve's lower down, but that then forces air out of this larger tube to fill your tires. But it also forces air through this smaller tube, so that's missing now forever. So you have your PSI number, your rating. But like I said, this wasn't working. Before I tested any of the electronics or anything, I opened this up and I simply spun this gear, and it spins okay up until there, and then I spun it back the other way and it spins okay up until there. So at that point I knew there was either something inside the motor jamming it, or there was something inside the cylinder here jamming it. So first thing I did, easiest thing I did, was I looked in the end of this, and you can see, if I spin this out of the way a little bit, you can't see very deep in there. I'm sorry about that, but you can see that this thing is just sort of hanging out. It's let me give you a closer look on that. See, there's the pin right by my thumb there. That is the end of the piston rod, and it should be sitting on that pin. So as this thing spins around, it knocks that and doesn't go any further. So obviously this thing's been abused somehow. Also, when I opened it up, I noticed that this support here is broken off. It's supposed to be right there. And this should be an easy fix. If I can just get this down to give it enough leverage. Oh, there we go. I think that got it. There. Now, what I'm going to have to do... Yeah, everything in here is sitting on rubber bushings because it all vibrates. And there's one of the bushings, and the other one was what fell just a second ago here. But what I'm going to have to do is take this retainer off and glue this back into place. I'll just put some super glue on it. That should work fine. But I'll be back. It'll be just like instantaneous for you, but it'll probably be about an hour for me. So, back in a second. Alright, we're back. And actually, it's the next day now. I put the glue in, screwed everything down. So, now that this is done, I haven't tested it. I'm going to reassemble the whole thing and test it because, like I said, this battery doesn't work. Oops. We move over here. Now, when I first got this thing, I was hoping I could recover this battery. But, as you can tell, it's not exactly flat anymore. And that means that it is the pressure's built up inside here. There's a nice big crack here. There's a smaller one here. And then right over here, there's another one forming. So I doubt this battery's even recoverable. And if I were to recover it, I might get like a few volts out of it, but not much. Now, gotta figure out... Yeah, okay, everything's mounted on the one side. So getting this thing out and putting the new one in shouldn't be much of a problem. Let's see if I can't. Oh, these leads are really annoying. That might be a little easier for you guys to see, a little easier for me to work. I'm not going to bother getting a wrench out. I'll just use my special little channel locks here. Alright, before I take this out all the way, we've got screw connections, lock washer, and the nut. And then this one here, yeah, that one's just a regular connection as well. Okay. Take that out. Leave the lock washer off for now. But we'll put all of this back together. Do the same thing on the other side. don't know if this thing is glued together. I haven't really used glue on any other spot, so I'm assuming it's just sitting in here, hopefully. And it is. Okay. So that sits in there. Ouch. Like that. And we'll do this one first.
That's solid enough. And I did double check to make sure all of the switches were in the off position before I started. I do have a habit of electrocuting myself when I do electrical work like this. 12 volts isn't a whole lot, so I'm not worried about that. Alright.
Now, just to check it, we can see, I don't know if you can see, I can't move the camera at the moment, fully charged. We have a flashlight. Okay, let's just reassemble this guy now. So, these plugs, I think they came out through this big hole. Alright, I got all the screws back here. Just put one in to get everything lined up. Alright, I've got the 6 screws back in. And if I remember correctly, these came off really easily. So they should go back on fairly easily. Can't remember what these are called. I think they're like bullet plugs. But, it's not necessary to crimp them. I just want to make sure it's not going to arc or anything. This is not fitting well. There we go. There we go, that's much better. Where was the other one? There's the other one. Alright. There's tons of slack there, that's good. And nothing. Huh. Wonder why that is. Oh, I'll figure it out later. And I'm going to call it there because it's been about 10 months since I actually got this thing and took it apart. And I've misplaced the screws for it. I know they're here somewhere, but just don't know where. But fairly easy redo. Pull the old battery out, put the new battery in. But with that, you guys have yourselves a good day. Just a little addendum here. After I got this whole thing back together, pump still wasn't working. So, Tore it apart. I figured out that the motor, as you can see, is not good. This piece here is supposed to be identical to this piece here. Actually, I should say the other way around. The brush broke off at some point, and there's the remnants of the brush. And we have our rotor. And from this side, it looks okay. And there's no damage, no apparent damage. Until you look right there. And then you turn it. Now these two are just for balancing. That's supposed to look like that. But that's not. At some point it got seized up. And the power just started flowing. And it melted down. This black is supposed to be this copper color. So I needed a new motor for it. That's fairly easy to come by. I got this. I'll look up the specs on this motor. And I'll just head over to Active Electronics and maybe, what's the other one called in Toronto here? Sayal, S-A-Y-A-L, I think it's called. They might have this. But I'll look it up, and we'll get a new one, get everything back together, and we'll be good to go. So, you guys have yourselves a good day.